but there might be an event that occurs that may be tragic. For the week of February 24th and the following 7 days. But this story that we're going to discuss in this week's 7 days is actually a couple of months. It's a story that begins here, but it will be months as we watch it unfold. And so we're going to go over the details. Neptune at 28 in Pisces, right? The North Node is now at 27. So these two were sitting together, but the node has moved to 27. And this is a big deal because the nodes spend a lot of time at this degree, the North Node and the South Node. So remember, 27, what is 27? News, information, social media, transportation, local transportation, my neighborhood, short trips, business, stock market. So when we think of communications and we see how it's in Pisces energy, well, then that could mean some really confusing communications. So we think of siblings and coworkers and neighbors, teachers and learning and school, right? Education, higher education with Mercury and Pisces, but also news about over there, right? Foreigners, foreign lands, speaking foreign languages. You know, you kind of got to remember Jupiter in the picture, right? But look, that's not all. Let me move this out of the way. There's just a lot in Pisces here. We've got the sun in Pisces at 6 starting off the week, right? Sun's going to move 7 degrees, which means the sun will end up at 13 degrees. If I still know how to add, it'll be around 13 degrees in 7 days' time. So we got Mercury at 19 conjunct Saturn to start the week off. Mercury-Saturn conjunction. Okay, so we felt this already beginning on the weekend and on even Saturday. I know last week's video was kind of a big deal towards the end of the weekend. It was a big deal. So Saturn is the person in charge. It's like dad energy. It's the big boss. It's like, these are the rules. This is what we're doing going forward at 20. Mercury's at 19. Saturn's at 20. That is 20 degrees. What is that? Think of the history. Think of the past. Think Scorpio energy. So insurance money. Think of that. Right. We had a big event in the United States. A CEO got blown away. Maybe that was not the right wording to use. The CEO was murdered. Basically, vigilante kind of vibe to it. There was definitely message. There was definitely messaging part of that. And so just right here kind of fascinates me because it's Mercury, and that definitely is all about messaging without a doubt. I mean, there was even words on the bullets, right? So, or the bullet casings. So Saturn rules structure, reorganizing, and it's Pisces. So we think politicians, we think the government, we think, you know, people who are in charge and rules. We think duty, responsibility, and work, career, you know. So if it's Pisces, sure. I think I said in the last video, I think I might have said something like Hollywood, right? But when we think politicians and public figures, right? Public figures, sure. CEOs can definitely be CEOs of insurance companies too. And I only say that because of the degree. 20 degrees is the Scorpio degree. And well, Pisces is hospitals. Pisces is hospitals, healing institutions. It's also prisons, right? It's music and sound and like all that good stuff. But the news is such a big deal in general because of the nodes at 27. So information, and it being probably on the confusing side. So water, deep, murky waters. This is where Mercury becomes murky for sure, because Mercury doesn't do well in water. Mercury is weak in Pisces, very weak. Now, Mercury being local transportation, I have another chart we're going to look at in a second. We'll talk about that. We'll touch on it real quickly. But in the meantime, we think news and public figures and communications and probably public figures of social media sites. That's just the reality here, right? So it's what's fascinating is you think Jupiter, ruler, ancient ruler of Pisces, foreigner. Dude's a foreigner, wasn't born in this country. And all of a sudden, even though he wasn't elected, he's kind of the president of the country all of a sudden, right? So, wow. When I see Pluto people with power and Pallas Athena connected and it's in tech, it's in Aquarius energy, I'm just like, the supplies, serious food, right? Food and grain, and it's in Pisces. And so the Panama Canal crap. When Sirius goes into Pisces, what's interesting is Pisces can definitely make something confusing. It can be like, all of a sudden, I don't see that anymore. What's going on over there, right? It disappears. It's behind the curtain all of a sudden. So this Mars at 17, the beginning of this week, it's been here at 17. You see the difference now, though, is Mars is not retrograding anymore. Yay. However, it is still out of bounds. It is decreasing in the out of bounds, which is good. So hopefully this will be significant where things aren't as extreme as they were. It's still out of bounds, but not retrograding. What gives me pause is that this Mars stays at that 17 degrees for a very long time. So it means it's barely moving. It means it's barely moving. And 17 degrees is the Leo degree, folks. You see that? It's the Leo degree. So that's children, fun, joy, creativity, risky, taking a risk. We think of sports. We think of performative energy, athletics, competing. A lot of Olympians have this energy, but organized sports in general. And we think of putting on a performance, comedy, comedians, but literally lots of politicians and vocalists, anyone who can perform and who can really belt it out there. Leo energy. They got the roar, right? We also know of quite a few prominent politicians, but authority figures who have some strong Leo energy, strong Leo energy. So 17 degree, the degree of Leo, and it's Mars energy, and it's still out of bounds. And it doesn't really move. So it's intense. Weapons. Think of war. I'm not saying anybody's going to war, even though we already have wars happening, but it is Mars in Leo still. And when we have Leo energy and the Mars is sitting there and it's kind of really intense, there's only one king of the jungle. You follow where I'm going with this? So this Mars sits at this 17 degrees all the way until March 8th. March 8th, this chart begins on the 24th. So that's a long time to be sitting there. So the 1st of March, we got we got Venus drawn in here. It says March 1st, March 2nd, and that's when her retrograde begins. And she's sitting there at 10 degrees. Okay. So what happens with Venus when she sits there at 10 degrees? Well, it's in Aries, which is Mars energy. So it's Venus and Mars together. 10 degrees, Capricorn, Saturn, business, corporations, government. Who's calling the shots? Who makes the rules? Who is the boss? Who is the frickin' boss exactly, right? Who sets the regulations? Are there any regulations? You can see the words confusion and water and clouds and fogginess. And I've got the words. These are just keywords, okay? Because we have Mercury going through Pisces, right? And this is March 1st, by the way. March 1st, Mercury has now passed Saturn. It's now at 27 degrees conjunct the North Node exactly on this day, which brings out about some power, but it is in Pisces. Confusion, water energy, public figures, politicians, people of the cloth, maybe celebrities, musicians even, We think of people who are in power, foreigners, foreign lands, foreign languages, like foreign governments, and what really goes on, who's really pulling the strings kind of stuff, right? So Mercury is transportation. Okay, I mentioned that I was going to talk about this, and I want to bring this up because when I look at this chart, just remember what I'm about to say is just an example. It's just to give an example to teach about when in history, not so much a history lesson, because that is like one of my absolute worst topics. I'm really bad with history. Um, but when you have Mercury transportation, short distance transportation in Pisces, which is I want to travel over water. If I'm traveling, going on vacation, taking a boat, right? I'm getting away. Well, how do you do that when you're Mercury, right? Like we don't have cars that go through the water, right? Some would say a speedboat. Sure, okay. Well, we do have helicopters or maybe even drones. But if nobody's in a drone, well, you know, it's usually not that big of a concern unless you're in the United States and people are, making mistakes with their delivery drones and all up in arms and screaming, "Holy shit, what's going on?" Like the world is crumbling or something. But we do have smaller boats, even, right? So what happens? What happens when you have that mixture? And especially water events, because water is really strong on the chart. And there's just an unbelievable concentration of Pisces. Look at the stellium. So just a whole lot. I mean, the two Sapphos, Hercules, like there's more. Not to mention Sirius, right? Sirius is now at 2 degrees, values and money. Sirius, 2 degrees, money and values, right? We think of the supply chain and of course the Panama Canal, so many goods. On this particular day, the authority figure, right? The big time authority figure, the boss, it's at 11 degrees. And 11 degrees it's an extreme degree in that it's Aquarius energy. It can be shocking. It can be so sudden and surprises. There can be like this lightning bolt, like, holy crap, all of a sudden somebody, said or did something, right? Flexing their power, flexing their I'm the boss energy, right? But again, this would support any sort of technology. And when you're mixing Pisces energy into it, we would just automatically say bad actors. Like the US government, I'm recording this in December, right? And the US government, I think it was before the holidays, maybe even around Thanksgiving or maybe before then, the US government had put out a warning about don't use the text messages on your phone anymore. Like if you're logging in on your bank or whatnot, and you're asking them to send you a text message for your code so you can get into your bank account, they're saying do not use texting unless you use an encrypted app first, because they had verified information that there were foreign entities who absolutely were targeting Americans' phones and getting that information. Now, this probably isn't the first time that we've gone through this, but that's an example of this sort of energy. Telephones is definitely Mercury, communication, technology, number 11, right? We got Pandora's box at 28. She's been at 28. She's not an especially fast mover, but that's the public. 28 degrees is the public, and it's in water. Mars in water, right? That's that same Mars I've been talking about. We got Jupiter at 12 degrees, at the Pisces degree, water, right? And Jupiter rules Pisces, ancient ruler, and it's in Gemini. So if you're doing any local like trips, short trips, long trips, road trips, or like say you get up in a helicopter on a crappy day, and I'm bringing the helicopter back again because when Kobe Bryant and his daughter and all those other individuals, and I don't know their names. Sorry, it's not to belittle them or whatever. I just, yeah. I don't even know Kobe Bryant's daughter's name. But for the people that perished that day, it was supposed to be a quick helicopter ride. It was foggy out. It wasn't even, I can't remember if it was over water or not. I mean, I know they crashed on land, but it was a really foggy day. And they really shouldn't have gone up. They just shouldn't have. And had they not, they could very likely still be alive. Now, with that said, this is the kind of energy that you have when it's Mercury and Pisces conjunct Neptune. Poor decision making, confusion, my judgment, my ability to make a decision. This is a good time to go to sleep. This is a good time to watch a movie. This is a good time to do something creative and to listen to music or make music. This is totally creative energy. So for this week, this is the big story, but it's only part of the story. It's only part of it because we've got Venus at 10 and we know she begins her retrograde. Okay. She begins that retrograde and she goes all the way back 24 degrees of Pisces. No shit, 24, a Pisces degree. She starts the retrograde at 10 and goes back to 24. Mercury's not retrograding yet, but Mercury will begin a retrograde at 9 degrees of Aries, right where Celestia is at the 9 degrees here in Aries. So Venus and Mercury go to basically 9 and 10 degrees and go retrograde back. They both go back into Pisces. Both. Venus goes to 24 and Mercury goes to 25 Pisces. You see? So whatever happens at this time, some sort of a water event, and if it's not necessarily water, there's confusion and illusion. And, you know, we think of when people are on the stage and the screen and they're putting on a performance, there's something here. Even if it's not someone like deliberately being misleading, there's obviously going to be some of that, but there might be an event that occurs that may be tragic. And it's not about somebody being deceiving. There was just confusion. And with that confusion, a poor decision was made. We will get more clarity after Venus and Mercury go all the way over here and then go back into Pisces and then go back into Aries. We kind of got to wait for those retrogrades to complete, to get out of their shadow zones before we understand, before we get more clarity on what actually happened, you know. And even then we might not still have the full story because it happened in Pisces, right? Yeah. There will definitely be management of what's released to us. And this sounds super cryptic, I know, but well, this is Pisces. This is Pisces energy, you know, it just kind of has that vibration to it. It's just the reality of it. But we know Venus is money and women and values, natural resources. And Sirius is at 0 at the beginning of the week, right? Yeah. And Mercury and the transportation. So when I say things like the supply chain and the Panama Canal, that part seems kind of obvious. But what I'm concerned about with this chart, of course, is the Mars at 27 because, well, look. Well, actually, Mars is at 17 now. But it will get back to 27. And when it does get back to 27, these damn nodes will still be sitting here at 27 degrees. I'm not making that up. And it's going to go after what it's want. And there's even history here, lots of history, because it's Cancer energy and it's Scorpio energy. This is all about the past. And it's Pisces energy. There's a lot to do with the past here. And Scorpio says, yeah, Scorpio is our shared natural resources. Shared natural resources. So we'll see how this turns out and what happens. Okay. But those are my concerns as I'm looking at this. March 3rd is when Mercury, March 3rd, Mercury is going to enter Aries on March 3rd. So this is a big week. This is a big week. Even though Mars is going direct, it's intense and it's powerful. And this definitely gives me concern too. So there's a lot of things here where I can see people of power who are feeling like they're the ruler of the world and they're going to do what they want. They've got a plan and they're going to do what they want. So, yeah, I'm praying this that what it looks like and feels like. I'm praying that, because here's my thing. I am praying seriously that with all this energy in Pisces, normally when there is a stellium, this is the teaching anyway. I'm just going to tell you the teaching. The teaching is when you have more than 4 or 5 planets in a sign, that it takes on a spiritual quality. And I'm looking at this and I'm just like, a spiritual quality. Well, Pisces is spiritual, but people disappear with Pisces energy. Shit happens, right? The confusion can set in with Pisces. So spiritual or not, it's the 5D realm. So, yeah, that brings back my original concern that I'm going to kind of share, which is, if something that includes Mars, a soldier, if something happens, if something happens, it will be and shaped and molded as though, maybe there was an act of aggression on someone's part, almost as if something was maybe baited into doing something. I mean, I really don't like to speculate. I truly don't. And I'm saying if there is anything that occurs, when there is so much of this illusion and delusion and clouds of confusion and murky waters at play here. I mean, Mercury's here. And because of the structure and the organizing with Saturn at 20 and the revenge with there's just too much here. And the sun in Pisces, there's just too much here. And so I'm just saying, if something ends up happening, it's almost as though this was part of the plan all along. Sure, let it happen. Then we'll have a reason to, to be on the defense and to maybe send the Navy over by there or some shit like that, right? Now, that's just one example of one scenario. And it doesn't mean that it's fact. It doesn't mean, hell yeah, that it has to be that way. It's just an example of the energy and how it can show up. Because when you're talking about nations and countries, the free will factor, then you kind of got to look at the members in Congress, there's just a lot of things you have to take into consideration. Okay. And so with those considerations, I think that being smart and thinking things through and being logical about it, I think that's going to go a long way. So I'm praying that music and sound and Hollywood and musicians and more musicians, like folk musicians, like people, like the Bob Dylans of the world. And is anybody familiar with Jesse Wells? He's always talking and making songs about current events and, just shit where the little man, we're us, where we the people are always on the short end of the stick kind of thing, where we always kind of lose out because we're not the richy rich. And so I'm hoping that maybe something beautiful, something simplistic like that. But this chart is intense. I brought this back up just to reiterate March 1st because even at this time, we have the vertex points. And the vertex points in this chart, I mean, shit, they're even at 27 degrees. Yeah, the vertex is even at 27 degrees. Can you see that? So the vertex is at 27 degrees in Aquarius. That's another reason why I have a little bit of pause. And, you know, sometimes things happen and we don't hear about it or we hear a different version of what happened. So it's always, I think it makes it really hard for people to be, super predicative and clear about it. But when you see that we have multiple items at 27 degrees, and that means that the vertex is at 27 in Leo, America's president has some significant objects at 27, 28, and 29 degrees in Leo. He's got Regulus on his ascendant. He absolutely thinks he is a king without a shadow of a doubt. So I know the ascendant is just, your appearance doesn't mean it's who you really are. Well, like I said, doesn't mean he really is either, but he has his Mars right there as well, his physical body. And so there's just some really strong energy here. Matter of fact, his Mars is conjunct this vertex. His Mars is conjunct it. So could that mean that something happens to him? Sure, possibly. It's, anything's possible because that that vertex point in Leo at 27 degrees, so shit trying to do whatever, that vertex and the angle, remember all this at 27 over here? Yeah, we've got all this sitting here at 27. So Leo and Pisces is a quincunx. It's a quincunx, but there's a lot in this quincunx. There's a lot. Remember, shocks and surprises too on this day. 11 degrees. There's a lot of Aquarian things. Keep your eyes and your ears open if you're planning on travel when Mercury is conjunct the North Node in Pisces. I wouldn't advise it. You know what I'm saying? Even for short trips, even if you're not getting in a helicopter. I'm not saying you shouldn't get in the car or go for a walk. I mean, yeah, but just expect confusion because we're all under the same influence. We'll all be under that same influence of confusion, maybe rain, maybe literally water, maybe snow. Who the hell knows? I'm in the Midwest. We could get snow in March. Either way, water and confusion can be a part of whatever happens that day, and cloudiness. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this. I will see you in the next one, guys. You take care. Remember, I always appreciate your time. Bye-bye.